My prediction was that the 4-year cycle is still in effect, and I think that was not the commonly held opinion. Since Bitcoin began, it has behaved in a cyclical way. It's still very much within the bounds of that cyclical behavior. And remember, the institutional players that came in, they too are in this psychology of needing really that 4-year cycle.
Jeff Park, he did make the point that we could just as well see increased volatility to the upside.
He's right. It's more a matter of when.
I've come across 2 businesses in this space that I found absolutely fascinating. The third one is definitely yours.
The Bitcoin Treasury Co's over the summer, they started talking about how insurance is a potential way to make their Bitcoin productive. The interesting thing right now, it's being used as a productive asset to generate insurance premium. Those investors who put the Bitcoin in the pool will earn yield on that Bitcoin. We're still so early. The world is filled with smart people. And yet we are some of the first people to really understand this. Archie.
Becca, Amilee, welcome to the Bitcoin Archive podcast.
Thank you. First time. Thank you for having me.
We didn't quite do a podcast, but you joined us for the 2025 wrap when we invited, I think, about 30 Bitcoiners.
Yeah.
It was such a mad rush to record all of that in 1 week. And but you're very kind to respond in time. I didn't give people much time to respond. It was like a 48-hour turnaround, and then we started recording, and you were one of the people, thankfully, who responded. And we were kind of happy with the end product, actually. So
I thought it was great, and I'm still in that flying high because my prediction when we did it was that the 4-year cycle is still in effect, and I think that was not the commonly held opinion.
Yeah, it wasn't, because what did we do? We peaked in October, right? Bitcoin peaked in October.
Yep.
But until we broke down below 90,000, there was still quite a little bit of hope. And I wouldn't call it enthusiasm, but there was a little bit of hope that we would continue upwards, and it sort of just crashed from there.
Well, I also had the hope, but even at that point, we had an all-time high right on schedule. Mm-hmm. It was a disappointing all-time high, but it was an all-time high right on schedule. And this drawdown that we're experiencing now is right on schedule. And mm-hmm. And so for me, I think cycle theory isn't a theory. I just think historically, since Bitcoin began, it has behaved in a cyclical way, and everything up till now, February 20th, I feel like it's still very much within the bounds of that cyclical behavior. I've had some friends say well, what happened? What will happen if we hit an all-time high in 2026? Would the cycle be broken then? And I was, maybe, but it hasn't happened yet. And so for now, as far as I'm concerned, we're still very much within that 4-year cyclical behavior. Whether we assign the root cause, is it the halving? Is it the election? Is it? I don't know, but it does continue to happen. So
it feels to me like a bit of a cultural or psychological remnant of the early days of Bitcoin, where the halving definitely did play a role because it was such a massive part of the supply side.
Yep.
But now it's negligible now, but it feels like it's a remnant from the sort of early days of Bitcoin.
But that is actually why I had such a strong opinion of it to start with. So the first 10 years of my career were as an apparel merchant, right? So clothing. And so I was choosing styles and looking at the fashion side of it, but also choosing quantities and forecasting how people behaved. Mm-hmm. If we use that industry as an example, let's say in the month of August, retailers, to try to entice back to school shopping, would put all kids' clothes on sale in August to pull in customers, right? And they would do this. Over time, then the customers learned, don't do your school shopping in July because it's almost certain that in August it's going to go on sale. So they changed their behavior to match. And so then you do that for a certain number of years. It doesn't actually matter what the root cause was. Did the retailer mark the prices down first, or did customers demand it? Doesn't matter, but they now have synced up and they influence each other for the cycle to continue. So at this point, 2026, people, it may be a remnant, but people are, behaving in a very similar cyclical manner. And I think the other thing that's interesting too is people will say that the institutional entrants should be flattening, and there could be an element of truth to that. Things change. They just tend to happen more gradually. You don't go from a very cyclical behavior to a non-cyclical behavior over the course of 1 year. And remember, the institutional players that came in, especially with the derivative products, the bonds, that the Bitcoin treasury companies, they did it because of the volatility. It is the volatility that makes those products work. And so they too are in this psychology of needing really that 4-year cycle. It is the crazy drawdowns that make those products work and make them attractive to the bond market. So I for better or worse, I think we will continue to be in that dynamic, and that should mean that this year is a good buying opportunity in general.
I think you've touched on a really good point. Michael Saylor even says that I'm selling vol to the market and arbitraging basically fiat expectations with, what he thinks Bitcoin's compounded annual rate of growth is going to be. Oh. And so, and I spoke to Jeff Park recently, and he also made the case that actually these derivatives might increase volatility, not only to the downside, but also to the upside. And when we have a look at the chart, what we had was a compression of volatility over time, and then this current dump has been more acute, faster, steeper than any of the previous 3 or 2.
That's so.
Yeah, I mean, you just look at it on a chart; it's self-evident. We may not go as deep as we have done previously, but in terms of going from 126. Okay, it took a while to dip below 100, but from 90 or 96 down to here, it was really, really quick.
Yeah.
And so we had a space of 3.5 months for a 50% dip.
Yeah.
That is a precipitous fall, isn't it? But he did make the point that we could just as well see increased volatility to the upside as well. It works both ways.
I suspect he's right in terms of increased volatility to the upside. With my point of view, it's more a matter of when. So I don't personally expect some surprise, massive volatility to the upside this year, just because that's not when it fits the behavior of human behavior thus far. Of course, it could happen. I mean, that's how forecasting works, right? It's only probabilistic. It's not causing the future behavior, and you see the future behavior, it tends to be gradual. So people will get very pedantic and they'll say, well, it's been an 80% drawdown, so is a 50, is that even a drawdown? Of course it is, right? When you see things over multiple years, you're going to see a shift each time, and maybe over time the cycle will truly end and you'll stop seeing that cyclical behavior. But even if we're headed towards that, I would say that takes 2 to 3 cycles. So that would be, well into the 2030s before.
There is a saying in TradFi markets, what is it? The bull climbs the stairs and the bear falls out the window. But Bitcoin has almost been the opposite of that. Like after the consolidation of a bear market, it's almost been like the bull climbs up the elevator, and the bear markets typically last for about 12 months before we reach a bottom from the peak. Quite the opposite, because we used to have parabolic runs in Bitcoin. I mean, whether or not you consider 2020 and 2021 a parabolic run, I certainly do, even if it wasn't fully fulfilled, to expectations.
Well, I would. So where was the high? It was 126? 6?
Yeah.
So if we did a 126 and it went down to 16 at the
60. No, sorry. In 2021, the high was, I think, 69.
Right. But then the bear market.
And it went down to 15. But it took almost 12 months to reach from high to low.
Right. But from then low to high again, from 15 to 126 of this cycle, that's an 8.5x. That's within normal range of the cycle. So even people who are like, oh, it's so disappointing, like we were saying $1 million. I don't know why you were saying $1 million. like 126 is actually well within range of historical performance. So could have 300. Like there is a range, and I would have been much happier with 300 than 126, but we did have an 8x bottom to top, right? So let's see where we bottom out this year.
Well, there's a conservative view, and that's the one that you've outlined, and then there's the degenerate view, which is top to top, right? Because we're buying at the top, and we're waiting for the next top to be like a 30x.
Yeah.
Because yeah. I mean, when Bitcoin did pass 100, I did say I'm going to preserve some cash, and I just couldn't wait, and I bought some at 88, and so I'm writing that down. But it's okay. I'm fine with that.
I said I was going to execute some trades based on the calendar, October, regardless of price. I didn't quite live up because I still got pulled into like what if.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't quite execute as I intended, but I did okay.
No, I'm a hopeless trader because I am forever optimistic. I'm forever bullish, and that's just whenever I do anything in life, I fall in love with my ideas.
Yeah,
and it's a terrible trait to have as a trader, but it's good as an entrepreneur because you go and do the most ridiculous things that nobody else would attempt to do, like start a Bitcoin insurance company.
Well, don't think I'm not degenerate. Like the trading that I did is because I felt so strongly that I could feel confident in the 4-year cycle. I took a HELOC and I bought Bitcoin during the bottom of the last bear market. So the hope, had I executed perfectly, I would have liquidated the appropriate amount in October and paid off that HELOC and then repeated. And that is what I did, but I didn't live up to my own, like, do it on the calendar. And so I did some at, I think, 108, and then I think some at about 90. But I had executed the trade originally with the HELOC under 40. So it was a good strategy. It worked. I'll do it again.
Becca, a lot of people, I guess more and more Bitcoiners are getting to know you as your business grows and thrives, but we don't quite know too much about you. You've had previous careers in other industries, as you've just alluded to before in retail. But one of my passions is coffee, and I think we've had a little bit of discussion on the timeline about coffee. And when I say I'm passionate, it doesn't mean that I know a hell of a lot about it, but it's an integral part of my everyday routine. I just cannot go without it.
I love it.
Tell us about your history in coffee.
Well, the history with coffee actually was accidental. It's because I spent 10 years working at the Starbucks corporate headquarters. I went there leaving the apparel industry, mostly because I was worried about the future of malls, shopping malls. So I had built a career on these stores that are in shopping malls. I thought going over to Starbucks just was a safer industry that would survive the demise of the physical shopping experience. So I went to Starbucks. I had a really actually fun career there. I was there 10 years. I did all different things, but fairly early in my time there, I went through their internal training program to, kind of teach you top coffee basics, and thought it was really interesting, and took advantage of an opportunity to go far, far deeper than typical. So I went through internal, but then also external trainings and certifications. These are the same trainings that, coffee professionals whose entire career is trading, tasting, exporting, blending, roasting, and spending a lot of time with those people, that team, over about 6 years. And so I really did spend a good portion of my day, every single day, tasting amazing coffees, doing all sorts of experiments. I think there were definitely times where I had the opportunity to taste 10 or 15 exceptional coffees in a given week. And so, we can dive into whichever aspect you'd love.
Tell me about what makes an exceptional coffee for you, because I feel that what industry professionals rate highly and what I enjoy as a customer are kind of like diametrically opposed. I know there was a particular fad in London for a time to have really lightly roasted coffees, which I absolutely abhor. Just do not like it at all, because I don't know if you know about me, but my heritage is Turkish.
Okay.
And so I've grown up in a Turkish household where, not necessarily drinking Turkish coffee, but at least smelling it.
Right.
And, Turkish coffee has a particular profile. So for me, coffee, its origins are based on the smell of Turkish coffee in the house, filling a house. And so I like a darker, more traditional style of coffee with a dash of milk or like a flat white profile.
Okay.
But light roasted coffees are not suited to that at all. And I know that it was really difficult. London went from, a lot of the good coffee shops went from making my ideal coffee to suddenly making coffee I just couldn't drink.
Yeah.
So tell us from your point of view, like what makes a fantastic coffee for you?
Well, I think my preferences may be similar to yours. So I've done the entire gamut for a long time, and for me, my favorite perfect cup of coffee is brewed in a French press. It's a medium roast Colombian coffee, with some half and half, mostly for mouthfeel. I can speak, though, to this light roast coffee phenomenon, and I agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'll do it in the context of Starbucks, because I hear it a lot about Starbucks being burnt or being too dark, right? So, First of all, Starbucks roasting style is actually mimicking Peet's coffee, because the original owners of Starbucks were introduced to coffee in Berkeley at Peet's, and Peet's has a very dark roast profile and style. That to them is what good coffee was. So when they started Starbucks, they were roasting in the style of Peet's. And so, which is a darker profile in general. Like the entire spectrum from light to dark at Starbucks is a darker profile. But all coffee is bitter, right? So some of the flavor compounds in coffee are bitter by nature. Caffeine is a poison, right? It's there as a pesticide, natural pesticide to keep pests from eating the fruit of the coffee. So it's poison. It's bitter by nature. So you can't say, I don't like bitter coffee. All you're saying is you don't like coffee. It's a matter of how much. People, though, especially if they haven't gone really deep, they will confuse the taste of dark organic matter with bitter. And those are two different flavors, actually. And so they wanted less on the bitter spectrum, which means they also wanted, in their head, what they actually wanted was less cooked organic matter. So a lighter roast. That's fine. So now you kind of establish this middle band of acceptable levels of bitterness while still fully extracting the flavor compounds from the bean to the best of your ability. There was then, across the world apparently, it happened in the United States too, where what we call third wave coffee shops, right? So, hipster shops, independent shops, they actually, in large part, were having an anti-reaction to Starbucks. They were trying to differentiate themselves from this conglomerate that roasts this coffee dark, but mostly, and they were going to do something different, and they were going to expose customers to the range of flavors that are more over here. The problem with that is if the spectrum is here, and when you get on the bitter / burnt flavor, there is a too far, right? And where nobody
Yeah.
On the other end of the spectrum, the counter flavor to bitter is sour. And the problem is when these shops started opening up and roasting in this lighter style, they were actually just bad at it. They were inexperienced. They were trying to do a new thing. They were trying to get flavors that were not kind of accepted by society as the flavors. And they were straight up roasting too light. Like they weren't even achieving first pop. And you ended up with just very unpleasant coffee. And so I think now you have gotten to a point where they actually have more experience. And I think if the spectrum is here, there are good lighter roast coffees that come all the way up to that acceptable band that is lighter than my personal preference, but I would still consider it properly brewed coffee that is bringing enough of the flavor compounds in a way that it's properly brewed, just maybe not my preference. I prefer right down the middle. I like Colombian and Latin American because they're nutty, they're cocoa-y, and to me, they're very comforting, and it's just like, it's what a good cup of coffee feels like, or tastes like. African coffees are juicy and citrusy. They work really well in cold brew, but they're very acidic. And then Asian coffees, mostly Indonesian coffees, tend to be very dirt, they taste earthy, would be a nice way to say it. And they're kind of more of a flat flavor. And some people prefer that too. It's just like it's dark and cozy and there's not a lot of nuance. But it comes down to personal preference, and where I eventually landed, because I went so deep on everything, right? Like pour over versus press versus, deep, deep, deep. There's I believe it's a Duke Ellington quote where people were trying to get him to opine on somebody else's music. And he said something along the lines, paraphrase, of, if it sounds good, it is good. Do you like it? Does it sound good to you? Then I guess it's good music, right? So it's like, I no longer consider myself a coffee snob at all. Very knowledgeable, but not a coffee snob. At the end of the day, it's an agricultural product. It's something that you're consuming personally. Do you enjoy it? Is it part of your daily routine? And then I'm good to go. But I agree. Coffee is gross.
Baristas are not the only people who have that snobbery about them. Like chefs also, people in hospitality when it concerns steaks, for example, want to tell people how to eat a steak. And so it's not. But I'm surprised to hear you say that. Not surprised, but the reason I found Starbucks objectionable was not because it was dark roast. It was I couldn't taste the flavor in it. The flavor profile that I'm looking for when I'm like, there's just nothing here for me. I don't taste anything. And that's probably like a limitation of my palate, because I'm looking for a very narrow sort of taste profile before I can go, okay, this is good for me. I like it.
You're probably correct. And you are obviously correct in identifying if it's good for you or not. But there is an interesting thing at Starbucks that, at least when I was still there, I believe on hot coffee, 84% of customers took cream and sugar in their coffee. And so the Pike Place blend, which is their kind of standard blend, as well as their standard espresso roast blend, are both optimized to that end. And they have a very distinct flavor that I actually personally dislike. I do not. Those are their two main coffees, and I actually fully dislike both of them because I actually worked there and I know the whole lineup. Any espresso drink at Starbucks, you can swap when you order for their blonde espresso. Their blonde espresso is actually very good. And so then there's a couple of other non-Pike Place that I think are pretty good, that blends that they put out. But that would be my one tip there. If you're there because you're traveling and it's convenient, try your drink, but with the blonde espresso. I think you'll like it more anyway.
You said you have a French press at home. Is that how you have it at home?
That is now. I have had a very nice espresso machine. I used to do that, but after all these explorations and everything, I like the mouthfeel of a French press. It's thicker. I don't mind that little bit of sediment. What I really dislike personally is the most popular, which is pour over, or the varieties of pour over. One, I find it tedious. I don't want to stand there for 2 minutes and 20 seconds carefully pouring it over. Second, I think it results in a very clean cup of coffee, which people who like it, that's why they like it. But I find the paper filter, a lot of the flavor compounds in coffee are oils. And so the paper, anytime you use a paper filter, you're actually removing a lot of the flavor because it's going to get stopped by the paper. You can do pour over with an Able cone or, a metal cone, and that does help. I like that better. But yeah, I just prefer French press. Maybe I'll get another espresso machine at some point, but they just make a mess. I've got an instant hot water tap. There's a tip for you at the kitchen sink. So I don't have to boil water to do it. So I just grind my coffee, hold the French press under the instant hot water, boiling water comes out into the pot, and then set a timer for 4 minutes and get on with it. So.
What about the Italian style? I use the Italian style stovetop, the mocha pots.
I love mocha pot.
Yeah, I mean that's probably the closest thing to an espresso without going to all the trouble of having the machine at home. So I really find that convenient.
When I got rid of the machine, it was because I was like, I've got a mocha pot, and I also have mocha pot. I can't remember what it's called, but they made this other one that you can actually put milk in the top, and so yeah, I'll find it. I think it was discontinued.
I haven't seen that.
It's cool.
It's
cool.
I find the taste profile of that it just feels like. It's not quite an espresso, but and I find it much stronger at home. Like when I make a mocha pot, it feels like it's a lot more caffeinated for the same amount of coffee.
I mean, it's a lot of coffee. It might be more. I haven't measured recently, but I think the mocha pot quantity is probably more than a standard portafilter, maybe. Or maybe.
You can get different sizes. So I've got a two cup, and I use about a cup and a half of the coffee. Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean,
more than half.
How many, once the water is actually boiling on your mocha pot and the water is being forced up, how many seconds? I mean, it's going for...
I think it soaks up for a while.
Yeah,
I think
for a while.
Yeah.
Whereas an espresso shot is only being pulled, somewhere between 14 and 22, 23 seconds. Pressure, but that's a big time difference. So mocha pot still has an element of pressure. That's part of what is extracting. So it still has pressure, but more time. So I would not be surprised if you are getting like the highest dose of caffeine. And then if you did not light, what you dislike, but if you go a little on the lighter side, the lighter the coffee, the higher the caffeine. Because again, caffeine.
Oh, okay.
Because again, the caffeine is a poison. That was to serve a purpose. So once you start cooking the beans, roasting the beans, the more that you roast this agricultural product, you are cooking off various things, right? So you're cooking off flavor. So the darker your coffee gets, you're pretty much killing various flavor compounds and limiting what you're getting. But caffeine is also a victim of that. So the darker the coffee, even if it tastes bolder or stronger, it's less caffeine.
So with a darker coffee, I can get more of the flavor I want without necessarily getting more of the caffeine that comes with it as well.
By nature, you're doing that.
Oh, well, that's good to know. I can drink more dark coffee then. As Bitcoiners and coffee lovers, it'd be remiss of me not to raise El Salvador's coffee. Have you tried El Salvador coffee?
Ooh, let's see.
As in from there?
All right, right there. That green...
the green one?
The green one.
Oh, yeah.
Is the special bean of fire from El Salvador.
The President Bukele's coffee. Yeah.
So coffee.
I don't want to say what I think. I want to know what you think.
I would say, I mean, it was a drinkable coffee. I think they made a strategy error in grinding it, which made it really hard to like properly assess it. So by the time I had it, it had been ground for quite a while. And so it's already oxidized. And even somebody who's like a coffee novice or knows a little bit, staleness and oxidation is actually one of the easiest things. It flattens the coffee in terms of the flavors. So I think my advice would maybe on the next run, maybe keep it as whole bean. And I think it'll show up better. But
yeah, I was also sent some when they first launched, and I was sent coffee beans.
Oh, you were?
And I loved it. Yeah. I absolutely loved it.
Good.
Yeah, I really did. So I'm saddened to hear that you didn't get to taste the beans fresh, because I would have really liked your opinion on those. And it's like exactly the sort of coffee that I would like as well. Like it is a darker roasted coffee.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I would say like what I was able to get from it, I would say directionally was what I would like, but I could tell that just I was dealing with some staleness because of the pre-grind, so it definitely limited the flavors. But I was super impressed by both of the high-end coffee shops that I went to in San Salvador. They had their different varietals all grown there in El Salvador, but, I was able to do a Bourbon versus a Geisha grown in the same area. So, I really like doing tastings like that where you're having the opportunity to do side by side, because if it's two different varietals, but grown effectively in the same terroir, then when you taste them side by side, you actually are only tasting the difference in the varietals, and you can actually start to develop an opinion on, oh, I really like geisha, or I think geisha is overrated, or, so I had the opportunity to do that kind of thing, which I was super impressed by. Like, they were very top-notch shops.
When I went to El Salvador 3 years ago, I wasn't aware of its coffee heritage or anything like that. I knew nothing about El Salvador at all. And just from like the hotel restaurant, I ordered coffee, and I was like, God damn, this is good. I was not expecting this from a hotel restaurant. It was really good.
I was happy with that too, because around the world, most coffee producing companies export their best coffee. And sometimes 100% of it. So they only retain more or less cheap stuff, or they even kind of switch out and end up importing Nescafe instant coffee for their citizens, exporting all of it. Colombia is the one known example. I haven't been yet. It's high on my list to go, but supposedly the very, very best of Colombian coffee is retained and sold in Colombian coffee shops, and that's what Colombians enjoy. So I'm looking forward to go check that out. But I agree with you. That's why I keep commenting that I was super impressed by these two shops, because I was expecting the best of the Salvadoran coffee to be exported. But certainly they had retained some really special, very interesting coffees that had been roasted correctly, and the baristas themselves were very good. So they have a burgeoning little, home coffee culture, which I thought was really cool.
So what do you think it is about Colombia that they retain most of their best coffee for domestic consumption? What do you think drives that?
Honestly, I'd have to go do a little history research to find out. I truly have no idea. I would just the reason I said history is my first thought is going back to when coffee really started getting pushed out to the masses, and American coffee and a cup of coffee. That's all kind of post-World War II, actually. So when I'm thinking 40s, 50s, 60s, the brand Chock full of Nuts was like one of actually a good brand of home coffee. Mm-hmm. That's when that Juan Valdez character really kind of came into American culture, if you're even familiar with that. No? So there's this, in advertising of my childhood, even like Folgers and stuff, like Colombian coffee was presented as the best, and there was this, it's a caricature of this farmer. I think he wore, I don't even know if it was Colombian, it was probably misappropriated, but like he wore a costume and a hat, and his name is Juan Valdez, and he appreciates a good cup of coffee, and you can trust Colombian coffee because Juan Valdez, like he's the coffee guy. So, I mean, I don't know why or how they just chose to keep their very top coffee for themselves. But there is some interesting thing, at least in America, that going back as early as the 50s and 60s, Colombian coffee was seen as, yeah, that's good coffee. And I don't think
that's really interesting.
And there is my preference because of the advertising. It really is just a great cup of coffee. Latam in general, but yeah, Colombians are good at coffee.
Have you been to Melbourne in Australia?
I have been to Melbourne. It's the only place I've been in Australia. Amazing.
Really? Because that's where I'm from.
Oh,
yeah. yeah.
Fantastic coffee scene. And now I know why you like flat whites. That's your jam pretty much, huh?
When I tell people Melbourne is obsessed with coffee, I don't feel like the word obsessed really conveys Melbourne's relationship with coffee.
Yeah, I would, for people who haven't been but are familiar with the term third wave coffee shop or just the premise of a hipster coffee shop. I mean, Melbourne, that is the coffee. Like, it's only third wave, and it's only snobbery in a way.
Yeah.
But I mean, it means you really have had the opportunity to have craft put into it. I mean, it is an agricultural product, right? So there's a lot of variance to it, and how it's handled before it gets to you and right before it gets to you. So how it's handled more or less from the point of roasting forward definitely impacts the outcome, right? So it's a very interesting human, it's something that we share together. And I think when you get into these artisanal, very, you could say snobbish, but when you really go deep, I actually think it's a form of just human connection that's almost evolutionary, right? Sharing food together, sharing a meal together, giving somebody food if they're sick. I mean, these are very core how humans bond and share safety and things together. An interesting thing to that end, interesting to me anyways, is I actually, people will make fun of the snobbery, right? Or of using certain words. So if you're saying a coffee tastes like stone fruit, right? People are like, what is stone fruit? You're like, fruit.
Yeah, which one?
In it, peach, plum. And they're like, oh, you're so annoying. Why don't you just say peach or plum? The point is, it doesn't matter. If you think about teaching language in general with flavor, I always use the example of a baby, teaching a baby language. And if you think about giving a baby a slice of lemon their first time, they'll take the slice of lemon and their face is going to pucker up and they'll, have this reaction to it. And as the parents or as, the person feeding this to them, you'll say like, yeah, was that sour? Yeah, that was sour, wasn't it? Was that lemon sour? And so somewhere in the baby's brain, they're like, this feeling, lemon sour, right? The next day you give them a slice of grapefruit and they try the grapefruit and they have a very similar reaction to the grapefruit. And you're like, yeah, was that grapefruit sour? That was so sour, wasn't it? And so now you've taught the baby that this reaction is sour. The word that they use when I feel like that is sour. And okay, that thing is a lemon and that thing is a grapefruit. But this is sour, what I'm experiencing. And that's all teaching language is, right? Is we are calibrating our language together. So you are calibrating language with the baby that says, okay, when you have that face and that reaction, you use the word sour. When you're talking about the thing, you use the word lemon and grapefruit. So all coffee tasting or wine tasting or cigars or bourbon or anything else is some people who decided to nerd out a little bit and we decided to better calibrate our language. And so just because we decided to do this together, we use the word stone fruit. It doesn't matter that we use the word stone fruit. What matters is that we have a word that you and I have agreed to use. There's a flavor wheel, right, in coffee. What matters is that we have agreed to use these words to try to share a human experience that otherwise is unshareable because I'm experiencing it in my mouth, you're experiencing it in your mouth, in your brain. And the only way to share that together and have this shared human connection is to talk about it through common language. So there's actually like nothing particularly snobbish about it. It really is just getting closer and closer to sharing something and having a way to bond together. So that's how.
I mean, every subculture does that. Young people do that around the world with one another. They use words which mean nothing like what they intend, and quite a departure from the literal definition. So, I don't know if in the United States they still use the word wicked to basically mean cool, but in the UK, that's what young kids used to say. That I don't know what they say these days because I don't hang out with them, but they say all sorts of things and they don't mean literally what in the way that they're used. They mean something quite different. But as a subculture, they have that shared experience and it conveys sentiment or, whatever.
And inclusion, right? Like these are our words.
Absolutely.
This is what
that's right.
Feel closer to.
Well, that's one thing that I learned really quickly when I entered. Like I hated corporate life. But it's one of the things that I really picked up on quickly was whenever there was some kind of new vernacular introduced into the culture by senior executives, how quickly people took to them and just repeated them ad nauseum, like it was like that mirroring behavior to be able to say, yeah, we get it, we're with you, we're buying into this, don't sack us, sort of thing.
Startup life compared to not just corporate life. I mean, I thrived in corporate America. I had a great career there.
Yeah.
But I will say Starbucks in particular, and I have no problem saying this, is a very passive-aggressive workplace. And they do a lot of consensus decision-making, which I find silly. And so there's just a lot of talking around what you think. Like, oh, I think that, that's a very compelling concept, but I think maybe we should consider it alongside with some of the trade-offs. And you're just like, so no? Like, are you, no? Is that what you're saying? No? Just say no. But they can't say no because we have to do consensus decision making. So you have to go around and maybe a few extra meetings to also go around so other people can passive aggressively say what they don't quite think. And then eventually, so having the opportunity to come to Startup Life, do AnchorWatch, and move much faster and be much more direct. Like, I don't think that's right. Like, I think that's wrong, actually. Let's do it again, right? And being able to just move business at that pace is a much more comfortable environment for me, for sure.
I really struggled with the political aspect of corporate life, really. And that sort of, the culture that you described in Starbucks, I would have found that really suffocating.
Oh, yeah.
And I would have been an outcast, and within like 3 months I would have been thrown out, I'm sure. I'm just not that sort of person.
I am agile enough that I to think I can figure out how to thrive in any environment. And don't forget, I did really cool things at Starbucks.
Yeah.
I mean, I was doing tests and experiments. I did food and beverage development. Right now in stores, there's a pistachio latte. Oh, you said you were Turkish, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you want to?
Yeah, pistachio. We love pistachio.
Okay, so in what year was this? I don't even remember what year, but a long time ago, I went to Turkey. I've been a few times. It's my favorite vacation spot in the world, really. And I had this night that I ended out late at night. I was at a cafe. It started deluging rain. I think it was after midnight, and I didn't want to go back because I was going to have to walk a mile through this deluge and water was pouring down the street. The cats that are in Istanbul, like a little cat had curled up in my lap, right? So I'm a happy camper. And a man in this cafe, we ended up striking up conversation, talking for a few hours. And over the course of this hours, it was cold out. It was kind of an outdoor cafe. He had ordered me several different warm drinks. And one of them was with salep powder, but one of them was a pistachio rose beverage. It wasn't a coffee beverage, but it was pistachio rose. And so in the middle years that I was at Starbucks, Starbucks has a premium brand called Reserve, and it's what does these giant roasteries in New York City and Chicago and some other places, but also the Reserve brand where it has that star and they do fancier coffees. So I was doing beverage and food development for that sub-brand, and I developed a pistachio rose latte and a couple of others really inspired by that evening in Istanbul. And so that made it into stores. It did very well. It was artisanal though. So they made the pistachio paste by actually, with a mortar pestle, grinding up real pistachios. So it was a very decadent, beautiful beverage. After I moved on from that role, whoever kind of took it over from me removed the rose. So then there was a pistachio latte, but it's still this artisanal thing. I think that version was even better. It's my favorite drink that Starbucks ever made. And it did well enough within that brand that they then developed the pistachio syrup, the pumps that's in just normal Starbucks today. So if I'm not taking the blame for any pump flavor, but the fact that pistachio latte is in stores literally right now that you can get, like, that's the grandchild of my drink, which was from a night in Turkey with a cat curled up on my lap. Happy as can be.
That's a beautiful story. It's actually, pistachio flavor in London has really taken off in the last 2 years. I don't know what it is, but it seems to be Dubai inspired. Everything's just like
because of Dubai chocolate coming around.
Yeah, and suddenly like there's pistachio on everything now.
I'm sad about Dubai chocolate because I despise milk chocolate. I only like dark chocolate. And so Dubai chocolate is terrible. But I think the thing about pistachio, though, especially, I don't know about the UK, but especially in the US market, people love peanut butter, right? And
Oh yeah.
and pistachio is just it's a nutty, similar family flavor. So that's why I think it's easy to gain popularity. Is it's actually pretty familiar, but it's a great flavor. I love it.
So let's make coffee a thing on the timeline instead of let's post our morning coffees and good morning fam, here's my coffee, and we can make that a thing every day.
I think I'm headed over to London soon for a business trip, so I'll bring you a couple of treats, maybe of some favorites.
Well, I would love to host you
All right.
for lunch or dinner or coffee, and also come into the studio and I can show you around here as well.
Sounds good. We can get
So I guess it's we can't we definitely can't end the podcast here. Let's talk about Bitcoin because you have one of the most interesting businesses in this space, and I've come across two businesses in this space that I found absolutely fascinating. One is going to do Bitcoin mining in space.
Okay.
And the other one is a Bitcoin Lightning business called Amboss. And I just found those guys absolutely fascinating. But the third one is definitely yours because, first of all, who the hell do you think you are starting a Bitcoin insurance company out of nowhere? It's just like, who does that, for example? But also, in all seriousness, this is a serious product with a real need, especially in light of what we've seen happening in places like France. I know Joe Nakamoto has been posting quite prolifically about it. James Lopp has been profiling these wrench attacks for years, and he's almost got like an archive full of all of these attacks.
Yeah.
Bitcoin insurance is a serious thing. So, but tell us about how you came across that idea and what made you want to start that business.
Yeah. Well, I will say the idea was smaller. And we started a company off a smaller idea, but now we're 4 years in and fully expanding the scope and the future of the company to fully encompass Bitcoin insurance, which will be much, much bigger and an integral part of the asset class over time. The original idea was retail self-custody insurance. So it was just, hey, you've got your Bitcoin in self-custody, single sig, multi-sig. Maybe we would require multi-sig, but if you have that, you should be able to get insurance. You can insure your jewelry, you can insure your art, you can insure your other small precious items. Can't you insure a seed plate or something else like that? And so that's actually what the company, when we started the company, that was the idea. That's what we started building. And it has developed into something much more, really because of running into various roadblocks along the way and figuring out how to bring that to life. Because insurance, one, is regulated, and it is effectively just a capital market. It's banking by another name, right? So the insurer, sometimes backed by a reinsurer, has a pile of cash, right? Their reserves. They can invest or pledge their cash to different insurance programs based on their read on the risk reward of those policies, based on actuarial tables. And they can also diversify their portfolio to try to generate returns. So they might, put a certain amount towards homeowners insurance, a certain amount towards crime insurance, etc., things that are not property insurance at all. But they're doing two things. They're trying to maximize their own profit, so their own ARR, the return on the capital that they pledge, and they're trying to then, with their reserves, they're trying to then invest those reserves as a secondary form of income. And then I guess lastly, then they're also trying to, with both of those things, diversify their portfolio to manage risk internally to a way that meets their own goals, right? And so when we brought this program to them, this is domestic traditional insurers, this is overseas, there was a lot of intellectual interest. Like, oh, you're right. Like, Bitcoin can be abstracted to a small physical item. And if it can be abstracted to a small physical item, then sure, why couldn't you insure that under property insurance? However, we're not interested. We don't touch crypto. We don't do this, right? So we heard that a lot early on. And then the other thing we heard was the market is simply not big enough. And I do believe that remains true today. So, Bitcoiners, especially on Twitter, have very strong opinions about self-custody, and as do I, as an individual. That's one of the amazing benefits of Bitcoin, is being able to self-custody it. That said, despite what they might want to believe, there's not that many people that are doing it. There's not that many people or that much Bitcoin in retail held self-custody. So in order to entice the insurers to get involved, there were some who would be open to working with Bitcoin, but they needed a market that's large enough to entice them to even bother, because it's a lot of work to underwrite a new program. So we continued more or less to evolve our product and our approach, really to still serve Bitcoiners, the owners and holders of Bitcoin, but also continue to mature our program in a way that would actually entice the capital markets to come in, get involved, and actually pledge their fiat to underwrite Bitcoin, right? And so we were ultimately very successful in doing so by becoming a Lloyd's of London cover holder. Now, we weren't the first to do Bitcoin insurance. So Lloyd's has been underwriting crypto-related policies, I believe, since 2014. They had just done it on a very one-off kind of way. There wasn't a company out there doing it. It was just now and then companies would go directly to Lloyd's and be like, this is what we're trying to do. And a syndicate at Lloyd's would kind of work something out and put it out there for that one commercial client. There was nothing available for individual Bitcoiners. There was nothing really available for SMBs. Prices were very high. And so the big turning point in getting a product that SMBs and retail could use was development of our driving vault. So it was the tech actually of our vault that convinced them to back us. They told us that they get 3 to 5 crypto related inquiries per week to try to become cover holders. So to do what we do, 3 to 5 companies a week, year after year, apply or make contact trying to do this. They've only approved 2 ever. We're the second, and we're the only one that's authorized to sell. I can sell to commercial, of course, but also authorized to sell to retail. So it was, in fact, the Bitcoin technology itself that convinced them to do it. That's why they chose us, was our expertise in the actual technology. So when you're like, who the hell starts an insurance company? Well, if it's going to be a Bitcoin insurance company, it should be started by people who understand Bitcoin. It should be started by people who understand the technology, the actual risks. So when Rob, our CEO and my co-founder, came across Miniscript, so this is earlier, before we were a cover holder, it allowed us to protect Bitcoin in much more advanced ways, already part of Bitcoin, right? So we didn't have to write custom things. This is already part of Bitcoin. And it allows you to do Bitcoin cold storage in a way that, for example, could match the corporate structure of the company holding it, right? You can group keys, maybe with a group of executives as a quorum, and then maybe separately, you can also have a quorum of keys at your accounting firm or with your board of directors. And then you bring in time locks, and then you can say, well, what if the sea levels are on the same private jet and it goes down at the same time? Then what would happen, right? And so Miniscript and the technology that we use allows us to really game theory, not how do we eliminate a single point of failure? How do we eliminate almost every point of failure, even if they happen at the same time? And so we demonstrated to Lloyd's that this technology that we and very few others are utilizing but it's verifiable on chain. Like, you don't have to trust us. Everything about the vault configuration can be seen. And it allows us to do something really important in insurance, which is it minimizes aggregation risk to the insurers. Because, Archie, if you have a vault and you have keys to your vault, even if I do too, but you are a required signer, not an optional signer, you must sign. And your producer has his own vault, and he has his own keys. They're not your keys are not his keys. Even if something happens to you and your vault is compromised and I have to pay you out an insurance claim, because he has his own keys, and is also a required signer on his own vault, there's no overlap that a problem at AnchorWatch would impact both of you at the same time, or a problem with you would impact him, because every single vault in this is independent, and it limits aggregation risk. So that was very interesting to the insurer, and got them for the first time really very interested in being willing to back retail, because every single customer is independent. And then on the commercial side, we can demonstrate how actually, like, we can put far more compliance, right? Like, good old fashioned boring governance and compliance, but you can build a vault that matches the legal compliance, right? And so you can do things like that. And suddenly it became very attractive to Lloyd's and to traditional insurers, because now not only do they have a good sense of the chance of losses and what can cause losses, but now they have this property insurance policy, which it technically is, that has nothing to do with other property risks like hurricanes and wildfires, things that will wipe out their property book for the year if there's a lot of fires and a lot of hurricanes. We can help balance their portfolio to make it a non-correlated property risk. Because even if those happen, like even if a ton of people lived in an area with wildfires, the design of our vault means the wildfire wouldn't cause a loss. Even if their wallets were in their house, because we use Miniscript, we have these time locks, we have all these backup plans for backup plans. There really isn't a physical event that will permanently prevent a customer from getting regaining access to their Bitcoin. And so at the end of the day, what we ended up with, and again, this is an evolution over time, is something we're very proud of, where we say, look, this is the most institutional grade, enterprise level custody platform out there that has eliminated almost all the risks. There's a few risks that can get through, right? You brought up wrench attacks, right? This undoes a lot of security features, right? Also, what if AnchorWatch is bad? What if we are actually the fraudulent player, right? So that's a risk that the tech can't protect the customer from. And so those things, those very few things that could still cause a customer to lose their Bitcoin, those are the things that we were super careful to make sure are covered by the insurance, right? So it's like, if these unlikely but events happened, then that's where the fiat side, that's where the insurance comes in and backs you against those things. So we're covering you from nearly everything on the tech. We have procedures in place to further protect you. But if we don't follow those procedures, or if there's guns to the wrong head, you're still covered even in that case. And then on top of all of it, it makes inheritance pretty much foolproof. So
there are so many areas to cover, Becca. Like, how do you sit down? Do you literally sit down with a, not literally a pen and paper, but how do you sit down and map out all of those risks and identify them?
Yeah, I mean, we spent 3 years on it, and it is pretty much, that's how it starts. So it starts internally. We're like, how do we want the keys? And we would draw out the keys and the time locks. And then, for months and months and months, we would be like, well, what if this happens? What if this happens? And then that would lead us to be like, oh yeah, we need one more time lock. And if that happened, then we could have here, and here's the escape path, right? So we would go through and more or less game theory just endlessly. And then we just expanded it from there. So then we shared it externally and had critical minds, leaders in the space, right? Names who you've already mentioned, like look at the vault and ask us, what if this? What if that? What if this happens at the same time as that? What if this? And really, like, we did that for 3 years, right? Or for almost 3 years, because we were doing that from the point that we effectively discovered Miniscript all the way up until we became a cover holder a year and a half ago. And so it was a 2-year game theory by, again, starting with ourselves, then expanding to kind of knowledgeable Bitcoiners, then expanding to security experts, and then going through Lloyd's underwriters and really having everybody. And I remember I'm so confident in them because I've been doing this for years now. And people do definitely, with a smile on their face, they're like, what if this? And they think they've got me. And like, they never have me because like we have thought through everything and like all these entities. And don't forget Lloyd's, right? Lloyd's is on the hook for billions if we messed up. So like they have put their minds to it, right? And there was one instance that I can think of where somebody came up with something we hadn't thought of. And this is, probably 2.5 years ago. And the specific was he was asking a question about if somebody tried to commit fraud. And it was the combination of how much money they could save or steal by committing both tax fraud and insurance fraud at the same time. And the question was like, well, what if they do this and this? And we're like, oh, I don't know. And literally like we went back and he's like, that's a good one. And we made a tiny little change in the wording of our deductible to more or less make that no longer financially beneficial to a thief. And so then we removed that. So that in almost 4 years, I think we've gotten one scenario that we hadn't thought of and we fixed it immediately. So,
well, it's a little bit like as Bitcoiners when we encounter someone who has decided to offer the critique of Bitcoin and it's like, yeah, you think we haven't thought about that? There's like tens of thousands of us basically living our lives in a timeline fighting with each other. You think we haven't thought about that?
Right. Delivered with such confidence, right?
Yeah. Oh god, pizza slices. My god, these are like esteemed, so-called esteemed economists who are, they've best-selling authors. They write articles in newspaper, and they offer the pizza slice theory of scarcity. And I don't know what to say to them.
I know.
You can only laugh. Anyway, but it's always an interesting sort of cocktail party challenge for someone to come up with something new. Like I really do invite criticism of Bitcoin in the same way that you're like, okay, even if I have 1,000 of these conversations, that one girl just comes up with something I haven't thought of. That could be a really valuable thing.
The interesting thing right now, like in the last 6-8 months, is that suddenly there's a bunch of kind of new players and new entrants, new startups that are engaging in this Bitcoin insurance space. And a big part of the future of Bitcoin insurance is Bitcoin denominated insurance and using Bitcoin to underwrite insurance risk, right? And if you start utilizing Bitcoin denominated insurance with a Bitcoin reserve pool, then the Bitcoin that is sitting in that reserve pool by nature earns yield, right? So let's say I was underwriting the insurance myself instead of Lloyd. It was just our Bitcoin. If the insurance is being underwritten by our Bitcoin alone, then I keep 100% of the premiums that come in, right? And so it's my Bitcoin that is not earning, it is earning yield, but it's being used as a productive asset to generate insurance premiums, and I make my money that way.
Yeah.
Right?
It's risk coverage. That's utility.
Right?
Risk coverage is utility.
Exactly.
Right?
And so then, alternatively, if I raise the Bitcoin from investors, I can do the same thing where the Bitcoin is sitting there acting as a reserve pool and putting their Bitcoin at risk. right? Not risk of being traded away or something degenerate, but risk of a loss happening and not having the expected return because a loss occurred and changed your return for the year. But those investors who put the Bitcoin in the pool will earn yield on that Bitcoin. So if that was the case, then I would collect insurance premiums, and then a portion of what I've collected actually then gets sent right over to the investors who provided the Bitcoin. So for the last 8 or so months, additional startups have come, and the Bitcoin Treasury Co's over the summer, they started talking about how insurance is a potential way to make their Bitcoin productive. And I welcome them. Welcome to the thought process. I certainly agree with them. But we've been approaching it understanding that for that vision, that flywheel of Bitcoin yield with insurance to exist, a certain amount of insurance needs to actually be sold and generated. So there has to be a flywheel, because more or less, if nobody is buying the insurance, right, then I could have this pile of Bitcoin, but I'm not paying a yield, right? Because there's not enough volume on the insurance selling, on the distribution of products. So AnchorWatch, over time, we are setting up, we have a Bermuda entity, we can do Bitcoin denominated, but it's more about the right time and who the buyers are. Because really, a lot of the buyers right now are commercial buyers who actually need fiat denominated. They need predictable insurance expenses that, it might be predictable in Satoshis, but they are publicly traded companies and their books are very dollars. So I think over time, there's a lot of people who are, I would say, think boying about insurance right now. And I think for all of the industry, what really needs to be happening is developing more and better insurance products that meet people where they are, right? Maybe not everybody likes the custody as we designed it last year. Now we have 4 models that they can choose from, right? And so there are things that the whole industry can do to create newer and better insurance products that actually add value to the marketplace, get purchased, and now you have enough volume that you can make the switch to Bitcoin denominated and start generating yield. So AnchorWatch views this as a maturation of Bitcoin. Insurance is on every mature asset class in the world, pretty much, except Bitcoin at scale. There's a few billion on Bitcoin right now, but it's a $2 trillion, $1.5 trillion asset. So it's effectively uninsured.
Do you guys believe you've found product market fit yet?
I think insurance has found a product market fit. I think last year, the product that we had available was a good product, I would say more for retail, whereas the products that we have just announced this week are also good for retail, but they're more appropriate for commercial. We're becoming a qualified custodian, so very shortly we'll have that. And I think the combo of QC and insurance on the large side definitely will. The specifics of the policy, I think, my opinion is that insurance as a concept has hit product market fit. Bitcoiners think about themselves as a retail customer versus looking at where the volume is. And where the volume is, insurance is out there and being purchased and has been purchased for years. So I think where we are right now is we're trying to, again, expand the marketplace, more products that are good products for more types of people. And then we'll see over the next, I would say, 3 years, how those various policies have percolated and expanded out across more and more people. But insurance as a concept, yes, absolutely. I do think it has.
It just makes sense that, an asset of such value would have an insurance market out there for it, right? And so it can only be a good thing that we're getting more and more entrants in there that will help you guys sharpen up your products, because, they'll be having conversations with customers you can't reach all the time. Not everyone can talk to everybody, right?
Right,
so
yeah.
I think it's only going to get better and better often. I think the critics forget that we're still at the start of things. everybody. We're just still at the beginning.
And the things that we're talking about are not groundbreaking. I mean, I know that's not. I think as a startup founder, I'm supposed to say everything is groundbreaking, but I mean, think about gold, right? Like, if you are a gold investor, and actually, I'm familiar in the UK. If you're a gold investor in the UK, you can buy your gold from the mint. And without having to even go to a different entity, they will store it for you for a certain rate annually, and that rate will include insurance, right? So that is a mature way of doing it. You're like, yeah, I do want to invest in this thing. I need to hold it for me. I'm willing to pay some money every year to do that for me. And obviously it's going to include insurance, right? Because if you mess up, what happens? Nothing. Literally nothing.
Yeah.
And that's what the existing custodians are doing today. They have a small policy that is either like less than 1% of the total amount that they have under custody. Like, they've got a $200 or a $300 million policy, but they've got 70 billion or 700 billion under advisement or under their custody, right? And so they'll have these policies, and the reality is, if something did go terribly wrong, like there is nothing other than an apology, right? The whatever that 250 million policy that they do have will either get used by the company to fight their own legal expenses, right, to help cover the bill, or maybe they'll pass it on to customers. But again, it's like 1% or less of their total. And the only recourse is the company files bankruptcy, and maybe you get a little bit back, but there's nothing.
Well, we saw what happened with FTX. Even their claims were pinned to Bitcoin prices at the bottom of the market.
Correct.
And the recovery has not been factored in at all because the lawyers basically took $1 billion in fees. I don't know how you take $1 billion in fees as a lawyer. I don't know how you justify that cost. Don't know how you do that.
Oh, I mean, that's the exact risk, right? People who were impacted by FTX or Celsius or others, like, they got a rotten deal, right? Rotten deal. Why? Because there's no insurance. Like, there should be insurance. Like, if you are paying somebody bips, especially if it's bips, if you're paying somebody flat rate, like, fine. But if you're paying somebody bips to maintain a custody platform, I mean, I can verify that maintaining an enterprise grade custody platform has expenses, right? Has real expenses to provide that level of protection, but they don't scale forever.
The costs don't scale forever. Yes, you're right.
At some point, this becomes a high margin business. Why would they offer insurance? Because the insurance would cut into their very high margin business. So they'll say things like, this is sufficient, or we don't have any wallet that's larger than our insurance policy, so it's sufficient, or this is what the market has demonstrated their insurance needs are, and they haven't pushed for more. Whatever it is, what they're actually saying is, if we insured the whole nut, our margins would be way less, so we don't want it, right? And so far, the market, for kind of lack of alternative, was like, all right, I don't like it, but all right. Like,
Becca, it just sort of occurred to me that I see a lot of these companies position themselves as custody services. And I know your company positions itself as an insurance company, but given you're building your custodian, you're going to be, what is it? You're going to become a custodian or a certified custodian? Is that the term that you used earlier?
Qualified custodian, which is...
Qualified, pardon me.
Yep.
Yeah. And I wonder whether or not, as a marketing message, do you think it would be more appealing from a retail point of view, to be positioned as like an insured custodial services?
Well, as a matter of fact, perhaps. So we have...
Okay, sorry. I'm not trying to tell you how to run your business. It just bumped into my mind.
It's well timed because, I mean, literally this week we published a new website that has a lot more... information on a lot more ways you can work with us. So you're right, actually. Last year, our agreement with Lloyd's of London and how we were structured, it was such that we actually could not take on custody clients unless they were buying at least some insurance. That's how the contract was written, and we couldn't deviate from that. That limited us to US customers. That limited us to customers who see value in the insurance from day one. It limited us to KYC everything in a very, regulated way. And this year, we were able to decouple those. So for the first time, effective immediately, you can come and be a custody customer. So if you like our vault, and now we have 4 to choose from, we also have multi-institutional custody, which is still AnchorWatch's platform, but the keys are held by 3 institutions, ourselves, BitGo, and Coin Corner. So it's Isle of Man, so it's multi-jurisdictional. Unlike other multi-institutional products, like this actually is the AnchorWatch platform. We're not just a marketing wrapper on somebody else's tech, right? This is, very...
There are enough of those.
Exactly. Like this is an actual, technically advanced, very secure platform. That platform also can be even white labeled, right? So other companies who are looking to enable various aspects of technology can license and utilize Trident to serve their own customers for their own products. So it can be expanded to be used for Bitcoin-backed loans, for derivative products, for any sort of product that requires incredibly safe, preferably insured, collateral at the base of it. But we can do all of those things independently and together. So it's just, we have, to your point, within marketing, effective this week, we now have the challenge of telling the market that, like, hey, you knew us for this one way of working together. We have a lot of ways to work together that can meet you where you are, where your needs are. And so, I do think some people will come to us for custody only. Totally fine. Again, we have multiple models for them to choose from. It means I can now serve global customers who need secure custody, which, there are not reputable providers in every country around the world, right? So we can now serve those customers. I can do custom insurance. So if, when we talk about our custody policy or our kidnap and ransom policy, but you're a Bitcoin company building, or you're a fund doing something interesting, and you need something different. Like, that we do with Bitcoin insurance, but the policies that you've heard about are not what you're looking for. You can still come to us. And if it's insurable, we can work with you to craft a custom policy that meets exactly what you need, and then we'll be your representative on the Lloyd side, seeking the best price available. So we actually have a lot of capabilities and expanded capabilities, expanded products, expanded custody products. That's a big change from last year, and we're really excited to start talking about it. So this is the first time we've talked about it really on a show.
Becca, you're an accomplished person with a strong background in retail, coffee, and all the rest of that. And I know that I always felt that I was an entrepreneur in the corporate world, waiting to break out into my whatever that opportunity would be. And I didn't find too many people who were sort of like-minded in that environment. And I'm just wondering, like, you just seem to strike me as a very natural entrepreneur. You have that sort of energy about you, but did you always feel that you were an entrepreneur waiting for an opportunity, or you were just like, I'll just succeed at whatever the hell I do?
I think it's honestly more the latter. I think personality-wise and skill-wise, I knew I would have thrived in this type of environment, but it actually wasn't my goal. I can thrive kind of wherever I am. Not in a negative sense, but like I can chameleon into whatever group I'm talking to and meet people where they are and do what's needed to be successful in that environment. And my career, especially at Starbucks, where I did, I did logistics, I did planning, I did food development. I worked very closely launching Howard Schultz pet projects, which was really cool, doing fun stuff. And then I did this massive fintech program. And the reason my career did that, because that's not normal, right? Normal, even within Starbucks, you do logistics and then move up within logistics. And it was just too siloed for me. It wasn't interesting for me to continue doing that. Whereas in the apparel industry, you managed everything. So you managed the fashion, you got to use your taste, but you also managed the finances and were responsible to drive, 9 figures of revenue. And so you really did get to use your whole mind. So at Starbucks, that wasn't built into the role. So I designed my career to kind of move around the company and move up as I went, but I was going all over the place. What that has given me is a very, very clear understanding of how different organizations work. And so even though my goal was just to continue moving up into senior management in corporate America and achieve like my ultimate success that way, I was absolutely building these skills with the intention of that role being a general manager, a C-level, a COO, ultimately. Now we come over here and man, all those things are true. I get to do everything. I mean, I have to do everything. I get to do everything. But man, I am finding that 10 years of experience being all over the company being so helpful.
Give us some examples of that, because I think a lot of people, I really hate the word entrepreneur as though there's any kind of analog in a corporate environment to what it's really like to be an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. Give us some examples of your corporate life, the lessons that you learned in different roles and spaces, and how you draw upon those as an entrepreneur starting AnchorWatch.
Sure. I'll give you 2 examples. They're very different, but I use both. So one is just, say, an internal executive manager role. Because of how I moved around the Starbucks organization in this unique way, and I was kind of in people's work, I have a really good understanding of, say, how somebody who's on a business team or an ops team manages, say, 10 or 15 kind of bodies of work at any given time. And how you spend your day today or this week is a very dynamic situation of always rebalancing your priorities and or pushing things along a little bit at a time. I've got 15 things. I need to make sure I do this one thing this week on that one to make sure next week it's in the right place. And so you're always kind of cognizant of this global awareness of what's happening in the company. My experience working more with engineers and scientists of various types, but let's say as we transition here, we're talking tech developers and tech engineers. They tend to work more in the sprint fashion, right? Where whether it's a formal thing and they're doing scrums, or it's just how they have grown up thinking, is they tend to have one body of work and they work in a sprint until it is done. And then they start the next sprint and they do that until it is done. So as a COO, I need to be able to harmonize those 2 paces and make sure everything is happening by both teams so we can launch in a predictable manner, push out improvements in a predictable manner. So that's something that I feel that I'm very good at, but it's because of that corporate experience. Otherwise, if I had just kind of done my more core jobs, I would have never come across the tech team really at all. At Starbucks, there were 6,000 people at the headquarters. 1,500 of them were engineers, and I could have gone all 10 years without talking to a single one. Right? I would have no idea about even what a scrum is or, what a sprint is, because that's not a way that kind of my core roles would have done. So to be able to come in and very quickly bring all the efficiencies and the professionalism of compliance and operations and some of those, get these things set up, get the company moving that way. It's insurance. We have now regulated things. So incorporating, bringing all those things in, deploying, keeping them moving, and then integrating the tech sprints in a way that kind of fits. It's something that's just challenging. And I think as a company, we've done very well. The other thing from those years that, again, is more my unique time is these years. Well, I don't even know if it's unique, both in the clothing industry for 10 years. If you think about going into a store, the floor the clothes that are on the racks, they tend to have a change every 4 to 6 weeks, right? So it's fast, 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 fast. All the time, I'm at the same time thinking about what's on the floor right now. How's it selling? Do I need to put it on sale? Do I need to move it to clearance? Do I need to order more because it's selling out? And then in my next meeting, I'm thinking about 18 months out because we're talking about design and I need to get factories creating things, and it's 4 months on the water to get on the boat. And so you're always like very globally thinking about these things, but you are launching things constantly and you don't expect them all to work. Right? Like some of them don't work. You try to do your best to use your knowledge and data to forecast what will work. Then I went to Starbucks and I had mentioned I was launching Howard Schultz's products, right? This would be like, Howard has a friend in a particular state who wants to do a franchise. Well, we don't do franchises. We do licensed store. Well, he wants to do a franchise and we're doing it, right? Okay, so I guess I'm figuring out how to open a franchise store this week. I guess that's what I'm doing this week. I thought I was working on that yogurt smoothie. I guess I'm opening a franchise this week. And then, we'll keep going on the yogurt thing. And at the same time, we're going to test new ovens and see if baking cookies fresh in store, the smell of cookies increase sales enough to offset the construction cost of inserting the oven, right? So I was just always all over the place for years doing different things, but launch. Read, if it works, cut the product, launch something else. But so like product questions about product market fit. And my answer was like, well, I think insurance. Yes. Now, have we perfected each insurance product? Not yet. We will continue. We've just introduced 4 more this week. We will continue to introduce variants on custody, variants on insurance to create policies that meet people's needs, right? And we're learning that because there's not an established market. We're creating products as Bitcoiners, as business people, to try to do our best to hear feedback from customer. Oh, you want a policy that covers that? Oh, actually, I don't even think you're the only person who would want that. I think actually a lot of companies would want that. Maybe I should actually develop a formal policy that I could then add to our catalog, share with our broker partners, and get out there. And now we have another product. And so I think that's how we approach it. And that's good for our company. That's good for Bitcoin maturation. But it very much is drawing on really my corporate, kind of my unique corporate reps of just launching hundreds and thousands of things for 20 years. So,
on a scale of 1 to 10 regarding fulfillment, how would you rate starting your own company versus your corporate career?
Personal fulfillment? 10. Love it.
By the sounds of it, like you did some really good work at Starbucks. That's the sort of role that I would have absolutely died for, right? Yeah. In a corporate environment. But how would you have rated that versus what you've done at AnchorWatch?
I mean, look, I think the things that made Starbucks extra special, in addition to just getting to do cool stuff, I mean, having the amount of work with Howard and other senior executives, that was special. Not everybody enjoyed that, right? Mm-hmm. The things that were very enjoyable there were because it was Starbucks. Everybody loves to talk about it, right? I never had to wonder if I had something to talk about because as soon as I mentioned Starbucks, then people at parties or whatever, and they love to hear about it. Like they love to hear about it. And because of the choices I made and getting really knowledgeable on the coffee itself got me the opportunity to be part of this group that I was called all the time, like every week, to give special coffee tastings to celebrities, right? And so actually I joke because, Russell Okun, the Bitcoiner, former football player, he actually was on the Seattle Seahawks, I live in Seattle, when they won the Super Bowl back then. And we were talking through Bitcoin. And after like an hour talking to him, I was like, wait.
Oh, no way.
Did you actually, back when you won the Super Bowl, did you visit the Starbucks office? And he's like, yeah. It's like with a bunch of teammates and get a coffee taste. And he's like, yeah. It's like, that was me. So it's like
That is
I met him back then, and I delivered a coffee tasting to some of the Seahawks after they had won the thing. I delivered coffee tastings to, our board, which was, very impressive people, military leaders, celebrities, just prominent people, interesting business people. So I had all these opportunities to do that. And that did make it special. It was a special corporate experience. But then that part has more than been replaced in this industry, because we started this company. We're a serious company. We build good tech. We build good products. We have good reputations. And so I have very quickly in this industry, and maybe it's helped by my being a woman. I don't care either way. One way or the other, I have found myself.
so what?
Yeah.
So what?
Yeah.
Like, how many instances would that have counted against you?
Right.
So who cares?
Yeah. So I don't. I actually think it's a pro. I think it makes it easier for me to be successful somewhat. Not harder anyway. And so it's fun. I've just very quickly had the opportunity to spend my time with enormously intelligent people, which is like my favorite thing. I love raw processing power and people who come up with like connecting things that I hadn't connected and having these fascinating conversations. I'm in rooms with people with just as much influence and wealth as I had the opportunity previously, and just have a lot of fun and make really good friends in this industry too, who are very like-minded, right? Because most of my friends anyway, like not all, but like most, I would say there is, there's more to money than Bitcoin. And so, there is somewhat of a cultural bond or an ethical bent, that I think is a good foundation for friendships. And so, I found 10 out of 10. I love having a startup. I love moving fast. I love the pressure of it being, on Rob and myself. I was a goalie, I was very athletic and I was a soccer goalie, for many years, and, have games that end up in penalty kicks, and all the pressure is on me. And I love that feeling. I feel gratitude when I get to experience that level of pressure. And I've got games that come to mind where we lost, and I was the person who, if I had moved a little differently, maybe we wouldn't have. And I still love that feeling. I love the ultimate accountability. And the self-driven discipline and pressure, which is the only place it really comes from anyway. And so to be in an environment where I can be rewarded for that, I think it's the right setup for me. Not everybody has that internal drive, and you might not even know if you have that internal drive until you've actually taken the plunge and you've walked away from safety. But I love it. I think it feels great. It's exciting. It means that I no longer have to view myself through the lens of people I don't necessarily respect or want to emulate.
Yeah, totally. It's never really one of the things was I never really paid too much attention to seniority or anything. I could relate to, respect, and want to spend more time with people in an organization who were seemingly, lower status. And I think that rubs people the wrong way, because it means I don't defer to people who are higher up in the organization. I literally don't care.
Yeah.
And so I know that in life in general, I'm pretty sure in Bitcoin space, it's probably rubbed some people up the wrong way as well, because I literally don't care about any of that stuff. It's all about, what do I find interesting in you? Mm-hmm. Do you have a point of view that I find engaging? And do we have some kind of rapport? And then from there, we can build friendships, and from there, we can do business. That's what I really care about. And so that's why I'm not bothered by, I shouldn't say not bothered. I'm not overawed by talking to whoever it is within the space. It doesn't, because I'm not in it for that. I don't care about that.
And so here I respect all of that and understand all of that. And a lot of my Bitcoiner friends would echo something very, very similar. And I would say, like, I'm there in spirit, right? I'm a little bit.
I know what you mean.
Don't tell me what to do. I'm a very independent soul, right?
Yeah.
But my kind of version of that was, especially when I was in that environment, was whether I'm impressed by your title or not, it is irrelevant. You have the title. You are the decision maker. I need to make you happy to have the best outcome for myself, right? And what I found from the time I was 23, 22 through now, is when talking to, say, C-levels, and I only worked in giant corporations, publicly traded. So C-levels were very high, very, I just got in the practice of talking to them like a peer, but very honestly. So I didn't put effort into massaging things. If they said, is this a good idea or a bad idea? I would say, I think it's a bad idea. And like you could see sometimes my peers or even my direct supervisor like tensing, like you're not supposed to say it like that. And I'm like, these guys are busy. Like all they want is the information. They need to make a decision. Give them the information they need to make their decision. I think it's this. If you do this, here's the trade-off. I think the better decision is to do this. Here's the trade-off of that. I'd go there. And they're like, okay, cool. And now they trust me, right?
Yeah.
So it's not that I like cared. It's not that I was like, ooh, an executive. It's that I was like, I want to be successful. What do they need? Give it to them and like be that person. And the challenge for me in my career is it was the people between us that I struggled with. It was people who are like, no, don't do it that way. And I'm like, I don't know why not. He seemed to like it just fine. And he's the audience. He seems to appreciate it. So I don't really, but they were your boss, your boss's boss. So you still had to accommodate them. And that's where all the friction in my career was, and maybe why I wasn't already a very senior executive, it was that. And in startup life, that's just gone. Like there is not that.
I think we're like-minded, or peas in a pod, shall we say. But I suspect that you're a hell of a lot better at selling that message than I am, because it didn't work particularly well for me when I was dealing with, well, not so much the C-level, but yeah, many of the senior people in between. Yeah.
Do you think it's male-female?
I don't know. Interesting. When we were graduates, a female colleague of mine said that. She said, she was really astute. She said, I think some of the men view you as a threat just because of your persona, your stature, and the way you speak, whereas they view me as someone that they can look after. I'm like, oh, really? I never thought about anything like that. But then, but you can get the other side of the coin as well. The younger graduates by some executives were sexualized, for example, looked at in a particular way, like in a predatory sense. And so it doesn't always work out. It just depends on who you are and where you are and what sort of people are around you. And I don't think I was particularly good or well equipped to understand and adapt to that at that early stage of my career. And once I got into my career, I could no longer care to adapt. And so
The reason I asked, I was actually talking to American Hoddle on this, because I think Hoddle would also kind of fit into this personality type. But we were talking about even before working, we were talking about just school, performance in school. And he's he's so smart, right? Like, it's an understatement. We're having this conversation and he's like, yeah. And as a result, more or less, I told every teacher and authority figure to just like, right? In no uncertain terms. And I did not care. And my GPA was X, and I did not care about that either. And even though I had the same personality type as a girl, and what we were kind of exploring in this discussion is just girls, they learn to still just do the thing and get the A. We're a little more subversive, and we go around and so it's like you maximize, you follow the rules to create the least amount of friction. And then if you're of this personality type, now you've created the protection for yourself almost to kind of go around and do life however you want. And so we were just having this discussion if this is like a female thing. He and a lot of our friends like have a concentration of daughters over sons. And just it'll be really interesting over the next 10 years to see the children of Bitcoiners as they're raised kind of with this common attitude and just see if there's a big difference in girls.
Really interesting thing that you point out, because my best friend when I was a graduate was another girl we started, and she's probably the smartest person I've ever worked with. And it was around about the 3 or 4 month mark, like we were kind of sitting together in the cubicle, no one else was around, and she's like, "Hey, what's up?" She's like, "What the hell do we do here?"
What do you tell her?
And you have to understand, like when I started my career at a bank and undergraduate program, I was so motivated to like, let's go and get it. And I'm like, I looked around and I'm like, I'm not sure, to be honest. And that sort of started my downward spiral from there, because I just couldn't find any purpose in what we were doing. It was literally it was nonsense. She ended up having a 20-year career at that bank, and I left like 12 months later. So it's like she saw the same things I did, and she had the same reactions that I did, but I guess she had that ability to sort of just go along with it all, and just do the best, make the most of a bad situation, or compromise somehow.
And compromise had been time, right? I was very efficient. I was very good. And I was able to then have a significant amount of free time to pursue intellectual interests, side hustle businesses. And that was the trade-off. So I had the stability. I had the brand recognition that made other people impressed by me and gave me social credit. And then I had all this time to do the things that I actually wanted to do. And now I have no time, 0 time.
Yeah.
But I'm doing what I want to do, which is...
I mean, I was so flattened and just downbeat because, I by that stage, I had a previous career in hospitality management. I'd worked in restaurants, resorts, hotels, all sorts of things. I studied it. And so that was my life. And at one point, I was like... I remember we were sitting out the back having dinner, and I don't know if you've worked hospitality, like in doing a shift and stuff. And I've got the plate on my knees and we're eating, and it's like a Saturday night. And at this stage, I was like maybe 21, 22. I hadn't seen a weekend in 4 years, right? Yeah. Just working.
Yeah.
And right beside me was the general manager in her 40s with 2 kids, and I'm like, hang on a minute, like she had graduated from my school at the top of the class. Mm-hmm. And she was sitting in the same place I was with a plate on her knees, cutting up a chicken breast or whatever it was. And I'm like, is that going to be me in 25 years' time? And I just felt that it was such a huge sacrifice for not much of a reward. And I had to leave. So that's, by the time then I went and did my degree, and then I went into banking. And then I'm like 6 months into this, I'm like, what is this hell? Yeah. I couldn't believe it. Yeah, anyway.
I mean, one thing, there was a moment that somebody told me when I was already in Bitcoin, but before AnchorWatch, that he thought I had an exceptional mind and he wanted me to have an exceptional life. And it was just a side comment. And I looked around, and I have a good life. I had a good career. I had a beautiful home. But was it exceptional? Like, would 8-year-old Becca or 11-year-old Becca, like, no, probably not. It's good. And I think intense, but like not exceptional. And so then, my son at that time was kind of launching, right? So he was kind of out of the house and growing up and thriving. And so I just looked around, and I have all this energy. I have all these abilities. And I did see an opportunity with insurance. I think it's very much needed, and the TAM is enormous. And the amount of growth into the space right now is so small comparatively. So I thought my assessment was that it was a good risk to take. And the opportunity to surround myself with people that share this energy level. And I decided to go after the exceptional life. And I no regrets about that. Your thing about what are we doing here, like the woman that you met, that moment for me and kind of the downward spiral, not spiral, but the downward emotional experience that led me to be ready to do AnchorWatch was I had gotten to Starbucks, used to managing a very broad set of responsibilities where I felt ownership over my product, to a very siloed organization. And I was going through that kind of learning process, and out of the different silos, brand management, marketing seemed the most fun, right? They seemed to be the people who were making the decisions that I no longer had been making. And so I worked very hard to move over into Starbucks brand management, and that's where I did the food development. But I got there, and it's hard to move into brand. Everybody in brand has a top 25 MBA, except me. I have bachelor's degrees, but I don't have an MBA. That's not how I came in. And I got there, and brand was just people making decks and sharing them with other people within brand. And I was like, well, that's dumb. But we're doing this. And they're like, oh, no. Like, they're making the decision. We're just making the deck. Right. And that's how it felt anyway. And so I was like, but this is the sexiest of the teams. And this is the worst. Like, you are literally just making decks to show to other members of our own team. Like, what are we doing here? And so, I enjoyed the test kitchen environment and making drinks for a year, but as quickly as possible. I got back to real business because, what is that?
So why do you think there's such a mismatch between some of these glamorous jobs, which are essentially just, cubicle jockeys sort of? There's not much to it really, right? But to be able to say you work in brand was such a glamorous thing. And I know from my personal experience, it's mostly my female colleagues and friends who absolutely fall over themselves to get into a position like brand, for example. What do you think is the allure, and why is there such a mismatch that persists and people keep wanting to work in that industry or in that sort of team?
I have opinions. I think it actually goes all the way back to college, to university. I think if you think about the majors that are available, right? There's finance, generally there's econ, there's business management, and then there's marketing, and sometimes a separate advertising degree, or if not, advertising roles under marketing. And I think you're going through those courses and you're a young person and, you don't want to be an engineer or be a scientist or whatever. You just business is where you're going to be. And you look at those majors and you're like, well, I don't want to be a financial advisor. I don't want to do this. But advertising is sexy. It's fun. It's emotions, right? Like changing people's behavior by creating emotions, right? And
it's above the line.
Yes.
Everyone sees it. You can tell everyone all about it. I was involved in that campaign.
Yeah. Being above the line is absolutely a more fun place to be. I've always, until my last 3 years, I was always above the line. Below the line gave me a lot of knowledge to be able to run a company, mind you, but above the line is fun. And so I think just people get this idea that the concept of marketing and advertising is where I get to go to still make a lot of money, but I get to be creative and I get to use my brain and my judgment gets brought in, and things that, by the way, I'm not making fun of that. I also want to do those things, which is why I both enjoyed apparel and why I enjoy leading a company, because you get to do all the things. So it's not the desire, I think, is misguided. I think the concept of a job called brand management is a fantastic concept, because what does everybody want? Like our peers. Everybody wants to be paid to think. They don't want to be paid to use their hands and their body. They want to be paid to think. And that is the ultimate goal, is I'm so smart. I'm so intuitive. I'm so that this company is going to pay me a very healthy income for me to just think about how I can increase our sales and do that. And I think there is just this, misperception of what the job actually looks like, or they're okay with that. They're like, I'm making decks for ourselves because I'm being paid to think. And it just, I like.
Well, nothing is more strategic than a company's brand, right? How they position that in the marketplace. That's literally like step one.
Yeah. And I mean, Howard's biggest aspiration, always, like he said publicly, was to have the best brand in the world. And all the years I was there, it was a top 5 at least. And so what does that mean? Again, it means you're a tastemaker. It means that, you are in this emotional part. And just, I think, without making fun of it at all, I think people love to influence the emotions. That's why people become influencers on Bitcoin Twitter, right? Like they want to be viewed as a tastemaker. And so brand management, I think, is a very logical place to want to be. But once you're in it, I've just done too much what I consider real work to to be like enthused. Once I found myself in deck land, I was like, this is not.
I'm laughing because just as he said that, I was going to ask you about what you thought about the sort of people that you worked with, in particular the agencies that you came across, because I found those people in particular absolutely insufferable.
Yeah, I would say in terms of their intelligence and abilities, like what they could do, top notch. Like these are
what they could do, sure, but the way in which they manage their relationships and they massaged their messages, for example,
and
I just found
like I'm okay. Listen, if I have to get through an important meeting, I'm okay massaging, like to get through a good meeting. But it's most of my time I want to spend doing like real things, right? And I just think those people, I think they did eventually just take themselves very serious about it, and like the deck and having a good response to the deck, that kind of was the goal. Like that's it. It's not like, okay, now let's go do it and prove ourselves and make a bunch of money. It was like, no, let's just get the deck and then we can do the next deck.
Becca, can I ask you, because you've worked in a brand team at a high level. I was not in a brand team. I was more like the commercial partner to a brand team. Okay. And my experience in working with those kinds of agencies was I was never really impressed with the kinds of creative campaigns that they came up with, and I thought, wow, that's sort of mind-blowing, or that's going to be hugely impactful. Mm-hmm. Did you ever come across that? Because obviously you did, for Starbucks is one of the leading brands in the world. Did you work with agencies that ever sort of blew you away with a campaign that thought, we never really, that's really going to make an impact? I never came across one like that.
No, I worked in an agency actually, like earlier in my career. And no, I would say, no. I don't.
Because they pat themselves on the back with all these awards, ceremonies and things, I mean, they're all paid for, we know that, right? But, and I'm just, when I was sitting there, I was like, is it just me, or do none of these really move the needle at all? There's just no impact there. It's going to fall flat.
Yeah.
You might be able to tell the board of directors that you launched a new this or that, but the customers are not going to remember, or it's just going to go by.
And honestly, like, even though I'm the one that brought up advertising, like I have always interacted with customers through my product, right? Through the clothes I chose or the food I chose. That was more, if they bought it, they like it. If they don't buy it, they don't like it. That's how I was communicating with customers for the most part. And so I think the parallel to what you're saying in terms of agencies and what they're putting out, and what I saw more within the corporate environment, was more just the quality of products. So frequently, a product would make it all the way to kind of ready to be commercialized and put into stores because it checked certain boxes that you had been tasked to check, like high protein. Guys will like it, right? Blonde espresso, by the way. Here's you can tell me if you think this is a fail or a win. When blonde espresso was released at Starbucks, first of all, I love it. I think it's their best espresso. It's a good product. The reason it was even developed was to appeal to young men who, in theory, according to focus groups, wanted more caffeine. So lighter roast, Lighter roast coffee, blonde, more
Okay.
caffeine. So in theory, men should like it. And somehow, just because of that kind of origination of it, the advertising, they hired an outside campaign and they did a whole campaign using the word blonde, kind of insinuating something about blonde women and beautiful and guys like blondes. Like, whatever.
No, I could tell you that instantly because, the whole thing, whenever you see Starbucks in social media and culture, it's always women sharing that. It's rarely men sharing anything, particularly around the sort of the pumpkin spice season and all that sort of stuff. I rarely see men share anything about Starbucks unless like their name's misspelt or something like that.
The interesting thing about like men is, so then an example of one that where the product is right is for the same reason, men, keto, low carb, tasked the product development team. In fact, a guy named Taylor, developed sous vide egg bites, which are an massive success, right? And they taste good, right? Like, and so the decision to go after young men and try to increase sales from young men led to the development of a superior product, a very high protein puck that a guy can like pick up, get a protein shots effectively, and go on with his day quickly. That was a good product targeted at a specific particular audience, and they proved it was a good product by buying it, right? No marketing campaign whatsoever. One of the most successful products ever. So that's how I try to do it, even within AnchorWatch, is like, who are the product or who are the customer segments? What do they actually want? Do they want foolproof inheritance? Okay, let's make sure that not only do we have it, but that we're communicating that to them. Do they want corporate governance? And like, let's continue to build and iterate products that give people what they actually want, that improves their life. And if so, we're going to do really well. And they'll tell us by buying it.
I want to move on to your Bitcoin journey, but before we go, did you guys ever test the sort of whole bulletproof coffee sort of?
I've tested it. Like, yes, I've tried it. I mean, look, it's not how I choose to drink my coffee. I eat a high protein, low carb diet in general, so it's like I don't have a problem with the concept of butter, but I don't have any need to mix those two things together.
I knew we were going to talk a lot about coffee, but if we talk any more about coffee, I'm going to have to rebrand the archive, the Bitcoin archive, to the coffee archive. So let's talk. No, it's been a pleasure. I knew we were going to talk about coffee, and I wanted to, but let's talk about Bitcoin, because you mentioned that you got into Bitcoin before you started AnchorWatch, and I'm fascinated about what draws different people into Bitcoin, because from the very early days there were cypherpunks, there were ideologues, people who were political activists who were just sort of drawn to the utility of Bitcoin. And then a little later on, the first product market fit of Bitcoin was Silk Road. And that's when we had all sorts of people who were sort of what you might call risk takers, perhaps culturally on the edge of society, who were perhaps a little bit younger, some counterculture, some hippie, some whatever, just a collection of people who were just, willing to do things a little bit differently. And I'm curious about, what was your path to Bitcoin? Because mine is fairly conventional.
I wish I was being more subversive younger, because I'd probably have a lot more Bitcoin, but unfortunately, that wasn't my entrance. I have told a story about how I feel that I was primed for Bitcoin in 1990, and I'll tell you the quick version of the story. But I actually started trading in 2019. So I had a friend who I've always traded my own just retirement account, my own equities. I was 16. I've been doing that, and so I had a buddy that he and I would just trade stock dips just for years, and he texted me one day in 2019, and it hadn't even entered my consciousness until 2017. The first I ever even remember hearing about it was during the peak of 2017, and it being on mainstream news that they said, like, this Bitcoin thing is high. And so this was 2 years later. He's like, hey, Bitcoin's really cheap right now. It might be a good place to start trading. So I, just like any other tip, I pretty much just opened it up. I looked at the charts. I looked at a little this and that. At the time he told me this, it was very range bound. It was like $6,000 to $8,000, but like seesaw, like up, down, up, down, up, down. And so I was like, okay. So I threw some money in. I think I was just using Robinhood. Like this wasn't even real Bitcoin at the time because there weren't withdrawals. And
they had Bitcoin trading at that time?
They did.
They had, okay.
Yeah. And so that's what I was using. And just literally like while I work, just like the rest of my portfolio, if I saw a thing, I would like real quick execute a trade and then get back to work. And so I was doing that throughout 2019, and I was making like I think I had put in enough at the time for 3 Bitcoin. So I was like, I'd put in $20,000 or $25,000 or something like that. And, I was making like $500 or $1,000 per trade. And for that base, I mean, that was very good. I thought I was crushing it. And so it was just part of my portfolio, and that I was actively trading a little bit, making some money off it. And then sometime in 2019, you'd have to look at the calendar, but there was a week that it went up 40% in a week. And at that time, I was out of the trade on 2 of the 3 Bitcoin. So I had 1 Bitcoin that appreciated, and then 2, I was just like, I missed it, damn. And so, but I didn't know anything about it. I thought it would come back down. And so then, I've told this story a ton, so I'll just do super quick, but I found the app Clubhouse in early 2020. The COVID had started. I was working from home. I had just, because of my background in retail and understanding really like when behaviors change, numbers change, and when numbers change, what happens to stock. And so on March 4th of 2020, the day they sent us home in Seattle, before I went home, I ran to my desk and I liquidated my entire portfolio. Liquidated the entire thing. So I sat in cash when the market dropped, and I made a bunch of good equity buys then at the bottom. But I didn't do the same in Bitcoin. I hopped into this app, Clubhouse, and they were talking about Bitcoin. I was like, well, this app is kind of dumb, except these guys sound smart and maybe I can listen in and get trading alpha. The guys who were in there ended up being a bunch of Bitcoiners that we are all familiar with, who were hanging out during COVID. Suddenly they were finding each other. They had known each other on Twitter, or even before that on Reddit and forums before that. And suddenly, for the first time, they were talking to each other. So they were super excited to meet and be having these conversations. I ended up eventually inviting myself on stage and being up where I could actually interact with them, which then started a 6-month like masterclass where I could ask all my Bitcoin questions. And because of this moment in time where everybody was there willing to share of their knowledge and their time, I could be like, I don't get that. Like, why this? And they'd be like, oh, that's the difficulty adjustment. And maybe somebody would explain the difficulty adjustment. Maybe Jimmy Song would explain the difficulty adjustment to me. And I'd be like, I kind of get it, but I don't. And then maybe NBK from CoinKite, maybe he would unmute and be like, here, let me rephrase it. And maybe would rephrase it in a way that actually landed. And so very quickly, I could be like, nope, don't get it. Nope, don't get it. Got it. Cool. Next. And so it's just, I had this amazing ability to take in information because I was lucky about finding these people on that platform at that moment of time. That's how I met Rob. That's how Rob and I got our first funding for AnchorWatch. And so it really did kind of come back to that. And once I had those guys and Junseth and American Idol and guys who are also hilarious, by the way, which is a fantastic learning environment because you want to stick around because you're also enjoying it. So I had, these guys explaining they've been around since, in the case of Junseth and others that I've mentioned and more have been around like from the very beginning or very close to it, right? So they had this actual wisdom, right? Like, and when shitcoins and scammers would come around, they had seen it all before. And so I didn't even have to go through that, like, whoa, that makes a lot of sense though. Like, they would explain the scam or explain, even if it's not a scam, it's just not logical. Like, it's not good intellectual thinking. And I just was very lucky in getting that explanation that I was very quickly. I would say once I started interacting, I would say I was bought in at about 2 weeks, and then I continued learning. But the reason I was bought in, and this is the 1990 connection, is so in 1990, I was 8 years old, and it might have been 91, but it was whatever point the American national debt had hit $3 trillion. And we would keep the nightly business report, public television business show on TV, on a little black and white TV in our kitchen. And during family dinner, we would talk and have family dinner. But if the news story was particularly interesting, we would pay attention to the business news. So from elementary school, that's how I grew up. I liked the business news the best, much more than local news or anything like that. And there was this day, national debt hit 3 trillion. They put a chart on the screen. And at that point, it was already parabola shaped, right? And so I'm listening to the story. I, at that age, with the way I was raised, already understood debt. I understood it has to be paid back. And I asked my dad, who was a business professor, who typically could answer any 8-year-old question. I was like, how are we going to pay that back? And he was like, I don't know. And I was like, no, but like, really, how are we going to pay it back? Because obviously we have to pay it back. And he didn't have an answer. And I was like, no, really? Like, even when I grow up, I didn't know what a parabola is per se, but I could tell it's accelerating and it's not going to come back to a place that I could pay it back when I'm a grown-up. And he just simply didn't have an answer. And I remember very consciously being like, oh, well, the whole world's gonna collapse then. Like, even at that age, like, I understood America was on top, that we were the rulers of the world. And I understood that debt has to be paid. And at some point, we will not be on top of the world if we continue not paying our debts. So, like, at some point, the entire global order is going to collapse because of money. And I didn't understand more than that, but it is what led me to have a major in finance. I made that decision when I was 14. It's why I've always been business kind of oriented, is like, just money is very interesting. And there's something systematically broken underpinning all this money that, like, if this happens in my lifetime, like, man, it's going to be insane. Right. And so then I built my career. I started, doing the retail thing and moving up. But then when I ran into this group, just trying to get trading alpha, and listening to them talk and go into the different aspects of Bitcoin and of monetary theory and the history of the Fed and for the first time, though I was always business, I've never been in macro or anything like that. So for the first time, I was like learning about those dynamics, and then how Bitcoin, while I don't ever say like Bitcoin is inevitable, because there's a lot of forces that work against it, right? But Bitcoin, this thing I was learning about that was just genius. And the deeper I went, the more genius it got, because there were answers for everything. It was the first thing in my entire life that I was like, wow, it confirms what I thought I understood when I was 8, all this understanding. Okay, I was right on. And for the first time, there is a potential solution. And so, if I'm going to turn my career towards, this, it's because I see a commercial opportunity and I want to build a big successful company and have personal rewards for myself. But also, this is so important because actually it's the thing that could save the whole world and save America, right? Like, because if America then can do a transition, right? Like, I'm very supportive of having a Bitcoin reserve, because it's only one or the other. Like, eventually America loses its monetary leadership, or it manages to survive. And I think the best way for it to manage to survive is to continue having a strong dollar. Actually, I'm not an accelerationist. I want America to continue to drive the financial world. But if they can bring Bitcoin into that more or less as a blend, then it sets up America to be ready to transition to that if it's the way it goes. And I think it's only responsible for America, given how, like, all the strengths of Bitcoin and how I think the future of it will go, to have a very proactive strategy to do that. So it's fun to work on that and like fixing the world, fix the money, fix the world. I don't buy into a ton of the whatever gimmicks and the cultural stuff, like, but I like that phrase. I think our governments and politicians and corruption and all of those things, they will persist because humanity persists. Corruption isn't going anywhere. Bitcoin makes it harder.
You don't want to live in an apocalyptic sort of society, a dysfunctional state, that's for sure. I mean, some can argue it's dysfunctional now, but don't worry, things can always get worse. I'm interested that you said you got a finance education. I also have a major in finance, and I found that misdirected me a great deal. And for about 15 years, I was searching for answers that were what I observed was contrary to how I was educated until I found Bitcoin, and then it explained to me. Because when I majored in finance, they were still telling me that banking was all about being intermediaries between lenders and borrowers, and that's come on, like
nothing about that's printing and
and I don't know when fractional reserve banking started, but banks have been creating debt and money for the longest period that I can think of. And so we were still being miseducated in that sense. So I'd be looking around and like, what the hell is going on? When are these houses going to crash? Like these house prices, I should say, because I'd always known there to be a housing crisis, or at least an economic crisis, every 7 to 10 years. And every time there was a hint of an economic crisis, the government would just step in and bail them out. And I couldn't understand what the hell was happening. And it was only later, once I got into Bitcoin, that I understood the sort of generational antagonism between boomers and everybody else as well. Yeah. And I understood that, well, actually, asset prices have to go up because the government can't fund their retirement, right. the retirement of the boomers, and they've been pushing self-sufficiency and all that sort of stuff. Right. And I just felt like the biggest idiot. I felt like the biggest idiot. It was like I was searching for answers for 20 years that were, probably being discussed online, because online didn't really take off until really mobile phones and social media really took off. I know there were messaging boards, but unless you were really into something, you were not going to come across, discussions about monetary policy, for example.
This might just be a personality thing. I don't really look back at too much regret, right? Like, I mean, if I had connected things, or if I had heard things, if I had hung with different people, maybe this, maybe that, but like life happens as it happens. And I try to stay here in the present. I mean, obviously I've had crazy medical things this year. And I think I've had a really wonderful life. And, the fact that you and I are both saying, look, we had these concerns, or we have this personality, and it still took us like
so long.
Yeah.
I don't do that with respect to Bitcoin and how long it took me to find Bitcoin, or how long it took me to buy Bitcoin, because I knew about Bitcoin around 2011, and it wasn't on a Bitcoin forum, but it was on a different forum that we were having very superficial conversations, and I found those posts, and I'm like, I kind of got it from the outset, but I didn't feel that it was solving a problem that I had at that time, which is where my miseducation sort of blinded me to what Bitcoin really was.
I mean, we're still early, and I'm not just quoting Bitcoin,
very early,
saying like we're still so early. But I mean, look, the world is filled with smart people, right? I think I'm smart, but I don't think I'm the only one, right? And so, and yet, we are some of the first people to like really understand this. The few million people are like in a world of 8 billion are like some of the first who have actually had the opportunity to connect these dots and to see things. The system, our education, it's just pointed us in another direction. And whether I got wise in 2011 versus 2019, I didn't. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I didn't. So I found it when I found it. I think I reacted quickly once I understood what I had found, and I made major changes in my life, employment-wise, investment-wise, just lifestyle-wise. Like, I think, that level of understanding is transformative, right? Because it is going against your entire life of understanding the role of government, what money even means, fractional banking, like what it really, really means. Like I don't know how you ever would have come across it without going through that process, right? Even the people who bought it early, as you pointed out early in the call, half of them were doing it to buy Coke, right? Like, they weren't understanding monetary policy. They were buying weed and Coke and having it shipped to their house. And so like, if some of those subset were also intelligent people and held on to some long enough for them to grok some other about monetary policy, and it turned them into billionaires, boy, that's lucky. And congrats.
Yeah, but you know what? It doesn't bother me that I didn't buy Bitcoin earlier. What bothers me is that I was miseducated. That bothers me. I'm not bothered in the slightest bit that I didn't buy Bitcoin earlier. Like I never even had anything to be at peace with in that regard. I just don't, like you said, I don't live with that kind of regret.
Yeah.
But I look back because I thought I was being educated and I thought I was educated, but I was misdirected. That's what bothers me, the misdirection of 2.5 years of education that I poured my life into.
In other areas. So just a quick one I can think of is, I'm sure British colonialism education was similar as like American strength, which is we were educated on how we grew our respective empires, and there was a certain amount of heroicism with it. And then later on, you figure out there was also some brutality mixed in and some really horrific things, right? Like, as you matured and consumed other information or used your own brain, and you're like, oh, actually, it may have happened, I may be okay with it, but like that doesn't mean it was good. Do you care that we're miseducated as to that, or do you just like, why do you care? Like, I'm curious. Like,
yeah. So I got the total opposite of what I thought I was getting and dedicating myself to. Like that was for me to get my degree. It wasn't just a question of dedicating 2.5, 3 years of my life to a degree like most people do.
Mm-hmm.
I had finished my hospitality education. It was like, because I'm going back a little bit.
Mm.
Like I was a delinquent in high school, right? Like my grades were like worst in the state, right? And not commensurate with my ability. It was commensurate with my effort, right? So I was, and so like the first year after high school, I spent just a year doing like, what the hell am I going to do with my life? And then I got into hospitality by accident at the suggestion of one of my teachers, just to do something rather than nothing. And I really quite enjoyed as we got into the business subjects in like the third year. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to university since I like this so much. And I had job offers, I had a lot of connections in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
I was the student rep on the board of the school that I was studying at, and a lot of industry contacts. And I could have just gone out and made money, but I sacrificed like 2 consecutive summers. I did a semester, summer, a full year, another summer, and another full year. So like I felt like it was a real sacrifice for me to get my degree in that time. And I really knuckled down to get that. And then to look back and like I majored in finance thinking I'd learned something, and I was just missold something. And
got it. Okay.
I look back at that as a kind of, I don't regret getting my degree. I just wish I was taught the right things. Like I don't regret the commitment that I put into it, because, I was at that age where I had to demonstrate to myself that I was capable of doing that, and I was as smart as I thought I was, which,
You are.
the grades were good in university, I'm happy to say, when I tried. So my high school teachers were right after all. But I just look back on that with regret because I was miseducated. I wasn't told the truth about how finance banking works.
Yeah.
I was actually miseducated about all of that. And that's why I look back and I'm like, gosh. And I'd spent, 15 years trying to figure it all out, looking at the world and trying to figure out what the hell is happening.
Yeah.
Thinking that I'd been given the background through my education to understand it all, and it just wasn't making sense to me. And when it finally clicked, all that struggle of trying to make sense of the world that you see with the information you were given just sort of resolves itself, and you're like, gosh, what was that?
I definitely understand, especially if you were already making money. You were already being productive, and then interrupting that with the hope of gaining something to only be given more or less false information, being especially frustrating. I went straight from high school, I went to university. My version of that is when I went to university, sure, there was this thing of the world is built on bad math and bad money. But in general, I was just interested in these more thoughtful topics. I also was very fascinated by the idea of something untrue still affecting value assets. So you could lie about a company, right? Mm-hmm. You could lie about an executive, something that's patently untrue, but it gets out there and then the stock price drops, and then people's retirement is impacted, all going from this one lie. And so just this concept of true versus real, I thought was very fascinating. When I was 16, 17, kind of heading off to college. And my version of the disillusionment was more just getting to be an undergraduate finance major. I also had marketing, which I got more from transparently as a result. And I just realized that the things I wanted to be exploring, which are theoretical finance, are not undergrad. So it's if I really wanted to dive into that, I would have needed to continue and end up becoming an academic and getting a PhD in finance. And no, I wanted to go work.
Yeah.
I wanted to build.
I felt the same.
So.
We have this thing in Australia called an honours year after an undergraduate degree. Mm-hmm. And the university invited me to do that. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Another year? I'm done. And as it turned out, when I went to work, I was so overeducated for work, but undereducated for life. Just, to understand what all the issues that I discovered in Bitcoin, but for work. And then here's a spreadsheet, and you're like, are you kidding me? Anyway, here's a PowerPoint presentation, or write an email to such and such, and the sort of work that you're educated for versus the work that you do as a graduate. Gosh, yeah. I think I'd always had a mistrust of authority, but that led to a complete abandonment of any trust in institutions. With first of all, the university, when I realized that 15 years or so later, but then when I got into work, when I thought, that would just be I had this idea of professionalism where people were highly competent, collaborating together to solve problems for a business. Yeah. And I just found actually that was probably 5% of work. Yeah. Maybe 10. And the rest of it was just internal machinations. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I'm not good at that 90%. I'm really good at the 10%. Yeah. I'm really good at that, yeah. So anyway, Becca, you are going to be attending, or you're part of, the Women of Bitcoin Summit. Mm-hmm. They've just crossed over 1,000 attendees. I personally love these sorts of events, not because I'm an attendee or that they're targeting me or anything like that, but any way to make it easier for people to access Bitcoin, to connect with people that they might feel a little bit more comfortable with, I'm supportive of. I know it gets some flack in some quarters, but give it a fucking break, please, okay? We're just trying to make it accessible and welcoming to everybody. And then, once they find their group or their feet within the community, they can then, mingle with whoever they like thereafter. But tell me about the Women of Bitcoin Summit.
Yeah, so it is an online summit. I think it's 2 days, March 5th and 6th, and I'll be speaking at it. And it is, I mean, it's a comprehensive Bitcoin event. The invitees are targeted at women, though I think anybody can attend. And like you said, it's already got over 1,000 people signed up. And so for a digital summit compared to some others that have happened in the industry, I mean, that shows a significant amount of interest. To already have that committed at this point, weeks before is very, very good. And I'm happy to speak at it. We always joke around, we being the other 18, I guess, we always joke that there are like 19 of us like working in the industry. The reality is it's more, but it's still a minority. And I would say, in general, I have never been especially drawn to women's events because I have always found that women events is synonymous with 101. It's entry level. And so if you go to a women's event, it's to get an entry level amount of information, which was just never, that was never a good fit for me. That said, especially as a woman leading a company, I've heard from enough women that I understand that not everybody is the same and same personality. Some women do, in fact, appreciate an environment where they don't feel patronized if they ask questions, and it's a more comfortable environment. And so even if I don't personally need that, I am more than happy to take my time to speak to them. And yes, give them access to the information they're looking at. I think in general, even just going back to my retail experience, women make a significant portion of family financial decisions in the first world. Right? Like a significant amount of financial decisions for household finances. So, and that includes even if they're the lesser earner of the married couple. But they actually are key targets to educate and to help them understand why this should be part of their family financial planning and protecting their own family. So I think at the end of the day, the speakers at it are diverse. They're from all aspects of the industry. I think it'll be really good. Anything that Natalie and Efrat put on will be very well produced and very professional. I think it'll be really high quality. Tons of people will see it. And my point of view in general is that all Bitcoiners, men and women, if somebody has taken their time, skills, career, and chosen to dedicate it to growing Bitcoin, there are all types, right? And pretty much we should show appreciation for different people who are approaching it through their lens. And go back to that Duke Ellington quote: "If it sounds good, it is good." If some women, respond very well to hearing it from other women, then it's good. Then it's helping.
Just to put a bit of context to that, like my account analytics, I've got 1.8 million followers for Bitcoin Archive on Twitter. Okay. It's 90% men. Mm-hmm. Okay. So when you wonder why there's a need for events like this, it's just the discourse is overwhelmingly men. And whether you like it or not, as a man, how would you feel being in an environment where it's 90% women? Would you really feel like you could just be who you want to be amongst, 90% women? Surely there'd be some kind of part of you that wants to be a little bit reserved or maybe not quite act fully naturally yourself, your full personality. And so, this is an opportunity for women who perhaps are just new to Bitcoin and want to be in the company of other women and relax and communicate in the style that they're more comfortable with.
And I would just say, like, even edit it doesn't have to be new, right? To your point.
No, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
I don't know how you guys act when we're totally not around, but I assume it's a little different.
It's very different. Yeah.
Right.
We are savages. We're barbarians, and women civilize us. Make no doubt about that.
Right. And so, I mean, I can, without it being offensive to me, I can hear that and be like, and so if it was, let's say, a retreat for men of Bitcoin that only men were really invited to, it's just a nothing to me. Like, it doesn't have anything to do with me. So when you hear people making fun of women's events, then I'm just like, you're a loser. Like, I'm just like, there's no reason to make fun of it. Like,
no, there isn't.
There's people, humans, who want to learn, for whatever reason, they're interested to do it in the company of other women, cool. That's it.
So I've made the emphasis on, accessible to people who are new to Bitcoin, but let there be no mistake. There are very high caliber people who are going to be in attendance. Lynn Alden's going to be there. Everyone knows Lynn. Haley Lennon, she's a lawyer. Caitlin Long, she's a founder of a bank, Bitcoin Bank.
Yeah.
We have Carla Bitcoin. We all know Carla. Susie Violet Ward, who is one of the founders of the Bitcoin Policy Org in the UK. D++, she's a legendary developer in the Bitcoin space, highly technical, very accomplished person. So there's Paula Pendley. She's a Bitcoin lawyer. Efrat.
The level of expertise is going to be excellent. It's not a entry in that way. But that said, I mean, we'll communicate how we communicate, and hopefully it'll be really helpful. But there will certainly be opportunities to go deeper and do follow up, and hopefully just give people the comfort level to just, own the asset, right? Like that's what we're trying to do. Like own the asset, educate them as to why it's beneficial for themselves and their families. I think it's going to be a very well done event. Anything that Natalie has produced previously, I think she's excellent at what she does. And I think it's to the good of our industry and Bitcoin itself.
We've kept you for quite some time, but the conversation I felt was effortless.
Good.
And every bit as good as I knew it would be. I don't think you're probably my most anticipated guest, and it might be a surprise to you, but when I encountered your account online, you share a lot of personal information or personal stories about yourself. And it was at a time when I guess I was running Bitcoin Archive, and although the account was big, I didn't really know anybody in the community. And I felt like I was connecting with you, even though you didn't know me. I'm like, she's a real person. I really like her. Yeah, and so I think I may have told you, like, I thought I saw you at Sailors, but I wasn't sure if that was you or not. Yeah. And then later I'm like, why didn't I just go say hello to her?
Yeah, but we've met now. But no.
We've met now. Yeah.
I have very strong opinions about authenticity. And I'll share.
Okay.
I think all of life, all of it, happens in our own brains, right? So even as I'm looking at you, right, like I'm looking at you with my eyes, I see you on my screen there, right? And then of course you're not there, you're elsewhere. But even the distance from my screen, right? I'm not experiencing you even though I'm pointing at you right now, I'm not experiencing you there. The light comes into my eyes, flips, goes into my brain, is interpreted as vision, right? And I experience seeing you right here. I view all of life as that, all of it, every last thing. So everything, there's inputs out there, and obviously we have organs to take in those stimuli. But how we experience everything, respond to everything, it's 100% internal. And so if everything we are experiencing is internal and who we are is only internal, then the idea of not being authentic to me is the biggest waste of life there is. So the idea of people putting on a different persona for their public versus their private, or for, only saying certain things or fitting in or hiding themselves. Don't get me wrong. Like I do understand OPSEC and decisions that way. So it's not on that, but just online behavior in general, that people craft this persona for themselves who's perfect, obviously. And and I have no interest in it. I have none. I'm not a perfect person. I am not a simple person. I am a complex, thoughtful person who's always taking in new information. And if I'm going to take the time to interact with strangers on the internet, it's boring unless it's absolutely authentic. Like, I just don't see why people do it. I mean, I know why intellectually. Like, I know the egoic or financial motivations. Like, it's not that I can't understand it. I just don't understand making that choice. You have this opportunity to maximize yourself and maximize the experience you have in here. And the best way to do that is to share with other humans. We spent a lot of this conversation talking about coffee and doing the thing that I talked about. Like we used language and we made this connection over something that we enjoy together. And I just view everything online, and kind of what I share is similar. I mean, obviously there's some stuff that's personal that not everybody would want to make that choice, and that's fine. And I don't think other people's authenticity has to be mine. But I do strive to always be myself and honest and thoughtful and not too curated in a way that I hope connects, because it's the only thing.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely did with me. And at a time when sort of while the account that I was running was, quite large. Mm-hmm. I didn't know anybody, and there was a kind of the cloak of anonymity was there, so it was difficult to really connect with people. So I liked seeing people who were being themselves and sharing certain parts of their life that I felt I could connect with. And like, she's a real person. She's actually a real person. And there aren't maybe a lot of people are doing that, but I don't connect with everybody's story. Maybe. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know why. I just
before we had met, I do actually remember interacting with your account, back then a little bit, and having the sense, even though it was a giant account, a lot of giant accounts, are manned by teams and they're not personal, but yeah, I got the sense that there was, a real person behind that.
A real person.
Yeah.
Good. And that's how I wanted it to be. I certainly poured myself into it.
Yeah. And I definitely felt that, and that made me put more effort, I guess, into interacting and as well, because I seek those connections and those moments. Sometimes they're really special. I mean, like really special, right? When you find and you really connect with somebody, and it's just like, if what I'm happening up here is melding with what it's just, those are cool moments in life. And I think this industry, I think we're both lucky to be sitting in this particular group of people, because this particular group of people are highly intelligent. They're thoughtful. I don't agree with them on everything, as if them is even a group. But it's just a fascinating concentration of individuals, and I'm glad you doxed yourself. I look forward to just getting to know you better and seeing you around, and yeah.
So far, it's been pretty good as well. I'm glad I did it with much hesitation, but in the end, it was all in my head. And so far, it's only mostly been positive, 99.9% positive. So I'll take that ratio any day. Becca, Amilee from AnchorWatch, thank you so much. What a pleasure it's been to finally have this chat with you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to more in the future. Thank you for having me.